For the second drawing, you're going to be looking at the first realistic cartoon that you drew, and you're going to make another version of that is Cubist. Okay, so first we're going to watch this video of Picasso and look at some of his work. He had many different styles throughout his career, but he's most known for Cubism. He's one of the founders of Cubism. So that was realistic, and now here's a Cubist portrait of a woman. So in Cubism, you can break things up into shapes, you can show different views at the same time, you can show movement, all of these things that you cannot do in realism. So now we're back to realism. This realism is from his rose period. You can see it's kind of pinkish. And this is realism again, but it's realism from his blue period, so it's all in shades of blue. This is realism, but actually he painted this when he was 14. Picasso's dad was an art teacher, but my kids have an art teacher for a parent too, and they don't paint like that. So he also had a lot of talent and drive. This is Guernica. He was, I believe, commissioned to do this work, but it's about war. And they didn't particularly like the statement that he was making there. Okay, so Cubism, like any other style, it's a continuum. So there's a realistic side, which you've got here with the self-portrait, and then there's an abstract side of the style, which you have here with, this is called Weeping Woman. So we're going to be kind of somewhere in between this. You can see, you'll see in a minute that this is actually what Picasso looked like. He wasn't saying, though, that he has a line down his face. What he's saying is that if his face was carved out of wood, there would be a line there, because there would be this plane and then this plane and then this plane on his. Mine is actually, my nose is only 2 planes, okay? But his was kind of a bigger nose, and he had kind of a flatter piece right here. Same thing with his cheek. He's not saying that there's a line right there on his cheek. He's saying that there, if it was carved out of wood, there would be a plane here and a plane here, and where they come together would create that line, okay? So Picasso started Cubism when he was living across the street from a gallery that had some African masks in the window that were carved out of wood. And he was staring at that day after day and thinking, what would it look like if I painted that way? And then it kind of evolved over time. So this one over here is showing all 3 different ways to make something Cubism. So you see she's broken up into shapes. He's kind of highlighted that with the different colors here. He's also shown different views at the same time. So little kids do this often without even knowing it, but you are past that point, so you'll have to kind of work it in yourself. So these eyes are kind of football-shaped eyes, which means that she's looking straight at you. This mouth is a sideways-looking mouth, so she's looking to the side, and so is the chin. Okay, so she's both facing you and looking to the side at the same time, which is impossible, right? Except that it's possible in Cubism. The other thing that he's doing here is he's showing you movement. This is called Weeping Woman, but she's not quietly crying in the corner. She's totally freaking out. This is a Kleenex or a handkerchief that's over her face, covering. These are noses, and also you get some fingers in there too. But that means that she's not just quietly crying. She's like freaking out. She's moving all over the place. Okay, so showing movement at the same time. So if I wanted to redraw Picasso's self-portrait here, I could show movement by drawing multiple heads. So like one here, one here, one here, as if he's moving his head side to side. This is actually Picasso when he was much older than he made that self-portrait. But you can see he's kind of got like super big dark eyes. So that was pretty realistic. He was losing his hair from an early age, so now he's just lost it altogether. But what you see him doing here is he's making a light painting, which was actually on last week's suggestion for work. So he's holding a flashlight, and they had a camera open for long enough to take in this picture that he's drawn of a bull. But what you're seeing, because he was doing this in a dark room, but the camera being open long enough to capture that image, we can see the work that's around him. Picasso is one of the few artists that did work in all kinds of mediums, and he's represented all over the world in those mediums. Most artists know how to work in different mediums. So like I know how to work in photography and clay and printmaking and all of these other mediums, but my personal medium is painting. So if I had something in a gallery, it would be a painting. But he has things like his ceramics here, or huge metal sculptures in downtown Chicago, or all kinds of different things all over the world, which is super rare. This is an example of what you're doing for this project. So this right here, and actually his series of bulls was about 10 different drawings. So for this assignment, this is the realistic cartoon, okay, if you want to say it's a cartoon. Then today, for the second drawing, you are going to break it up into shapes. So here's a bull broken up into shapes. You could also show movement. So if I wanted to show movement with this, I would have maybe the head moving, head in a couple of different spots where we see all of the spots. Or maybe the tail, we can see that moving by having it there multiple times. Or the legs, okay? And we could also show different views at the same time. So maybe we have like a side of the mouth where we're only seeing the side. We're not seeing, right now it's looking straight ahead, okay? And then the next video, you're gonna make it even more abstract, okay? So now the legs are kind of just lines, okay? It's a lot more simplified. There's a lot of detail that's gone, okay? Here's another example. This is by Mondrian. These trees, his series of trees, are actually the only artwork of his that I actually like. I think the rest of it is all just terrible and we shouldn't look at it. But you should have an opinion about art. This down here is what his other work looks like. It's kind of lame to me, but you can like it if you want. So for this example of his work, it's called Trees. Some of these, if you didn't know that it was called Trees, you might not recognize. So this is like the realistic cartoon here. This is the Cubist version, so it's broken up into shapes, and you can see the background with these lines here. It's broken up into, the background is broken up into shapes too. And then this one is the third thing that you're going to do in the next video, which is exploding it. So this one, if it wasn't browns and greens and it wasn't in a series called Trees, you probably wouldn't recognize that it was a tree. It's kind of exploded out away from itself. It doesn't look tree-like anymore. Here's another example. It is Cubism, ending up as Cubism, but you're not going to get a tattoo on your arm. But this is the tattoo of Frida Kahlo that I have on my arm. I started with a photograph of her. Then I did a painting from that. Because remember, this is my work here. I'm a painter, so that's my self-portrait. I did a painting of Frida Kahlo. I actually photographed that painting, printed out the photograph, and then drew a line drawing off the top. I just kind of traced it off the top. And then I had about 10 versions from that line drawing to what is tattooed on my arm. So I've broken it up into shapes, okay? I haven't shown two views at the same time, and I also haven't shown movement, but it is still Cubism because I broke her face up into shapes. Okay, so you should have out your final from yesterday. And what you're going to do first with your sketches is you're going to get some space. So flip it over. If you used both sides yesterday, you'll have to raise your hand to get a new sheet. So I'm going to look at my realistic drawing here, and I'm going to just redraw it, just the outline right now. For the final, you're actually going to trace this to start off with, but this paper is too thick. So you're just going to sketch it as best you can to get going. Okay, so now you're going to make it up into shape. So some of these lines might disappear. I might add more lines to it. So you don't need to redraw the whole thing. I just sketched the outline. Make that eyebrow into a triangle now instead. Maybe the bottom of my nose becomes a triangle and my mouth becomes a shape like that. Then you're going to do the same thing again 3 times, changing it different ways. With your 3 sketches, they should be variations, but actual changes to be made in them, not you're basically redrawing the same thing again. That's not helping you formulate new ideas. So see, the first time I just did the same kind of hair that I had before. Now I've changed the hair and changed these shapes. Okay, so once you have your 3, you're going to raise your hand and I will give you a new final paper. This time with the final, instead of looking at it to draw your sketch, you can trace it off. Trace this off lightly because you're probably going to end up needing to erase some of it. I'm going to only trace off what I initially drew over here, which was the outline of my head and my hair. So it's going to be basically the same size as the other final. And I think I'm going to actually choose this face, but this hair. So that face, but this way of doing the hair. So now I have my realistic and my